Hello and welcome to this latest edition of Franchise Sports Talks Football. I'm your host, as always, Adam Ramic. Joined with me is my co-host, Luke Conboy. Luke, been a while. How you doing, sir?
Yeah, very well. Thank you, Alan. Yeah. Uh, well, it's trade deadline approach, isn't it? November 3rd, which happens to coincide with election day out in the States as well. So a busy time for all.
Go out
But
and
yeah, plenty
vote.
of targets. Exactly. Yep, going out and vote. You guys out in the US. But exactly, yeah, I mean, a couple of names been dealt already. I'm sure there's a few more to follow as well.
Well, yeah, let's just dive into the trade because that will be the main focus of this main part. As if you guys didn't listen to the previous episode, we are doing two parts. So the full podcast, which will be however long, over an hour, you will get on the YouTube, and then the condensed 40 odd minute version you will get on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. So make sure you do find it wherever you can. Yeah, let's just go into it. The first trade that broke was, there was talk that Everson Griffin was being shot by the Cowboys. The Cowboys are going full tank mode after the horrible Dak Prescott injury. Get well better soon. Dak, hope you get your money in the offseason and leave Jerry Jones for being an ass to you, but that's besides
Yeah.
the point here. Um, yeah, like I think Everson Griffin for a conditional 6th round pick to the Lions is for a Lions team that's suddenly like jolted into life and like
Mm.
vying for a potential wild card spot, which I don't think they'll get. We'll touch on it later on as to why I don't think they'll get it. But a team that's suddenly like jolted into life a little bit and looks like a decent little team. Matthew Stafford's obviously Matthew Stafford, which helps. I think he's one of the more criminally underrated quarterbacks in the NFL itself. Um,
Mm.
I think it's a really, really good deal for the Lions. Like a conditional 6 is if you get Everson Griffin, like potentially propelling you, helping you to the playoffs. I'm not saying he's like an Aaron Donald type, but he can certainly contribute, and I'm sure he's worth more than a conditional 6th round pick anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Lions, I should say they've kicked up a bit, well, albeit 2 wins, but they're on a bit of a streak now, sat at 3-3. So I'm sure they think they can catch the Bears for the playoff spot. But no, good bit of business from them. Obviously, conditional 6th, probably be bumped up to a 5th. They make the playoffs or something. But I think it just goes to show sort of the discontent that's rapidly grown in Dallas. Like you hear, rumors sort of circulating that new coaching staff and the defensive side of the playing staff are completely losing faith with the coaching side of things. So, Griffin's probably quite happy to leave the organisation, but it just sort of points towards a what should the Dallas have had 2020. Obviously, losing Dak to a horrific injury can't be helped. But if you look at their 2020 free agency signings, obviously Everton Griffin being one of them, he's been traded away to the Lions. But then sort of running through the list of the other guys they brought in, Clinton Dix, he was released at the end of training camp. Gerald McCoy, he was another a bad injury, ruptured a quad, and they managed to waive him. Dontoy Poe they brought in as well. He started camp on the PUP list. He was released just yesterday, October 28th, due to the quote being weight concerns and lack of production. They also lost Maurice Canardi, who would have been a depth cornerback. He's now opted out for 2020. And the only 2020 free agent who's still on the team is Greg Zuerlein, the kicker. So
Greg the Leg.
Greg the Leg, indeed. So a lot of issues in Dallas and here. Obviously, being they've had absolutely nothing come off their free agency class from 2020, and yeah, Griffin just been the latest one to lead the building.
Well, and to touch on let's talk about the Cowboys, because I feel like the Cowboys need a bit of a segment for themselves, really. A, the only person I really feel sorry for in this whole Cowboy situation is Dak. I think Dak should have been paid. He should have given this dude a 5-year contract, 36, 37 million a year, however much he wanted, because this dude is elite. Like, the problem is, and I'll say it, I don't think Mike McCarthy and the offense are a problem. I think the offense has been actually really well coached. I think they're overpaying Ezekiel Elliott, which is a different debate. Like, don't pay running backs 15 million a year, guys. Like, that's my biggest thing. Sorry, running backs. I love you all, but if I'm a team builder, like, I wouldn't pay you 15 million a year. Sorry. But I don't think the offense is the issue. I think it's bad recruitment by Jerry Jones, which has been constantly out there to see for like the past 25 years, ever since the salary cap was brought in, and Jerry Jones couldn't, spend his way anymore over the other owners, So it's like with the Cowboys and the defensive coordinator should not get condiments in his eyes, like they're for eating, not for putting in eyes. But I digress. The Cowboys are just a mishmash of here's all this wonderful offensive talent with as good as Dak is, he's not Russell Wilson. As good as Amari Cooper is, he's not DK Metcalf. As good as Michael Gallup is, he's not Tyler Lockett. And that's the easiest comparison for me to make because I think those are the two worst defenses in the NFC at the moment. So alongside the trash teams like the Eagles and Giants, but I don't really class them as NFL teams anymore. So there's that. Sorry, guys, who supports the NFC East. I'm sure you agree with me, though. Like,
the dumpster truck is the NFC East currently, but much to discuss on that one later on, I'm sure.
And no, but like just touching on the Cowboys, as good as they are offensively, they don't have that magic where even if in a 37-34 game where Russell Wilson has 3 interceptions, the Seahawks should still win that game. The Cowboys don't have that. If they don't keep people to like 20 to 24 points, they lose every game they're in. Exactly. And that's the biggest problem. And they don't have a defense anywhere near good enough to do that. Leighton Van Der Esch has, tailed off, I think, a little bit since his fantastic rookie campaign. Still think he's a very good linebacker, but nowhere near what the Cowboys thought he'd be. Jalen Smith. I tell you what, the one addition that they did make that has hit the jackpot, in my opinion, has been Smith as a pass rusher. I think he's been really, really good. I think Aldon Smith has been really phenomenal since he's come in. I think he's probably been. I think it just shows how talented a guy he is. A guy who's not playing the NFL in 4 years can just come out of nowhere and just be hyper productive as a pass rusher. I think is more of a testament to Aldon Smith than it is anything else.
Right. Dallas needed him to be productive. Like without him, like who else they got behind him?
It'll be like Seattle levels of D-line play.
It's just this consensus. The guy who's not played a single snap in the last 4 years comes along and he's suddenly, potentially your best linebacker on the team.
And the best pass rusher on your team, like not even close. Like he's definitely the best pass rusher.
Yeah, on the pass rush front, I mean, DeMarcus Lawrence, he's this blue chip guy, but he's been
ever since he signed that big deal. He's not been anywhere near the guy that he was.
No, he got his payday and he's quite happy just to sit on it.
And you know what? You get players like that, and I don't blame players. It's a tough league. It really is. And people forget how how tough and physical the. And I'm not saying that DeMarcus Lawrence is mailing it in, but like this team should not be in the position that they're at with Dak, without Dak. Like they should at least be a 500 team, at least. Like
exactly, got incredibly envious receiving corps. Like Amari Cooper, Mark Gallup, CD Lamb. Like some teams in the league who don't have their number one receiver is not as good as their WR3 on the Dallas. Yeah. So exactly. I mean, I suppose now Dalton's potentially out for another game as well. He's still in concussion protocol. So they got Ben DiNucci. I mean, no one ever heard of this guy at the start of the year, but he suddenly
and Colin Kaepernick does not have a job.
Exactly. Another reason why has this guy not been signed up immediately. But it seems like the Cowboys going to roll with Danucci. I think they face up against Philly in prime time. It'll be that potential car crash will be there for all to see. That hotly contested fight for the crown in the East.
God forbid whoever wins that, the NFC least anyway. I want to touch on the Lions side of things because, like you said, the Lions are the winners of 2. DeAndre Swift has started to look really, really good for him. Kenny Golladay is returning to the Golladay of the seasons before. I think, again, another criminally underrated elite wide receiver. Kenny Golladay is a true number 1, and you can't deny that anymore. I think he's really, really phenomenal. The Lions, they could be pushing for a wild card spot, man. I really believe that. Like if this good momentum carries on and the schedule they don't have a really tough schedule either. I feel like they could get to a 9-7, 10-6.
Oh, definitely, and that'll be enough for a playoff spot and that extra slot now and everything. So, but I always think the Lions, I think they're quite quite milquetoast, middle of the road team. Like they don't. Last year aside, they kind of completely flopped, but they're always kind of sort of around the 500 mark, sort of a 7-9, 9-17. Like they're not exactly the most interesting teams to watch, but you look at them now, you think, okay, well, you still think they're probably the second best team in that division in the North. Obviously, the Packers seem to have the NFC North on lock really. So the Vikings, they're completely fallen apart. The Bears are somehow what's their record now? They've been there 5-2 now, aren't they? But despite what they've got at quarterback, and the fact, just despite the stat that really gets me is the fact that the Bears they've scored 138 and they've conceded 140, so they've got a negative points differential. Yet here they are, sit at 5-2. Like that's obviously not a sustainable way to keep playing. So you kind of think, well, they're going to have to drop away eventually. I don't know if you they didn't look really poor against Rams.
They did.
The game just gone. So I think that's probably going to, I think the performance is just going to keep snowballing for them. So, but what's the Bears? Their loss is the Lions game. So I think we'll be surprised to see the Lions in the postseason. The season, he's continuing. As you mentioned, Galladay's now back from injury, so he was a huge loss. You can see that the offense wasn't really moving. DeAndre Swift, who said Peterson's kind of have to move to one side there a little bit. They got a great number 2 guy, Marvin Jones, as well. Like again, he's another one of those names that doesn't really get the talk that
really good. And then you have a young tight end in TJ Hawkinson as well, who's coming into his own in the NFL as well. Because we always see it with tight ends. Tight ends, unless your name's George Kittle and you're like superhuman, shout out to George Kittle. Like it pains me that he plays for the 49ers. He's probably one of my favorite players in the NFL. But unless you're George Kittle, you don't see tight ends come in and just play well from the jump. It usually takes about a year or so for them to get used to playing in the NFL. So, the Lions, they have a lot of positives. For a lot of the negativity they got towards the start of the year, there's a lot of positives to take away. Specifically, like Matthew Stafford still looks like an elite quarterback, a top 10 quarterback, in my opinion, because I feel like he gets very overlooked in these conversations. The Lions haven't lost because of Matthew Stafford. I'll just say that. It's never been because of Stafford. They've lost in spite of him. But again, he's not good enough like a Mahomes, like a Russ, like a Lamar Jackson to pull your team away from that like cliff of like losing a ton of games. But if you give him just average defensive play, he'll get you to a 9-7, 10-6 record.
Okay, I think Stafford sort of comfortably sits in between sort of like the 15th to kind of 20th best quarterback starter. Like he's not going to give you fireworks per se, but he's not going to throw 3 or 4 picks a game. And there's never been any talk at all of Stafford potentially being benched, or because the only time he's missed games has been for injury. And we saw like David Blau, whoever it was, take over on Thanksgiving last year. So they got Chase Daniel in now backing him up, but against Stafford's been like
Chase Daniel. Wow.
The NFL, I think him and Case Keenum's the NFL perennial backup quarterback.
Well, at least Case Keenum's earned his money.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen Chase Daniel throw a football.
Yeah, no, so he's bounced around the Chiefs and the Bears, and he's he's got his home in Detroit, but yeah, exactly. So it's a list of many. So probably almost rivals Ryan Fitzpatrick amount of teams he's been on, but probably got a few years to come yet. But as you say, like Stafford's is Mr. Reliable. Sort of you can depend on this guy to when the pressure's on, you can deliver. Right.
Definitely. And before we move on from this trade, I just want to say really good trade for the Lions.
Mm-hmm.
Really, it's not a bad trade for the Cowboys because it's an expiring contract. You still got something for him because he was going to leave at the end of the season anyway. And there's bigger problems in Dallas, apart from letting Everson Griffin go on a team that's this bad, that should be tanking. By the way, they should try and lose 2 games if you're going to move on from Dak. You should be wanting to go 2-14 to get Trevor Lawrence, in my opinion. That's just me.
The Jackson competition.
Adam Gase will run him close because Adam Gase. But we'll get onto that later. We will have a Jet segment,
Like I said, the weekly Jet segment now, isn't it?
Every time we do an episode, I will do a segment on why they should fire Adam Gase until he gets fired.
And it might be my new Twitter petition after the my Bill O'Brien one lasted 2 days. Perhaps it's time to cap down Adam Gase's year in the NFL.
But yeah, so let's not touch on Adam Gase and his ineptitude and the fact that he shouldn't be anywhere near an NFL team yet. Seattle made a good trade again. Trading BJ Finney and a 7th round pick or a conditional, depends on where you've read it. For Carlos Dunlap, who his time in Cincinnati ended a bit acrimoniously, shall we say? Tyler Boyd calling him out wasn't the greatest look in the world because I'm just like, oh, Tyler, you just wait another 5 years till he loses another 10 games every season and then Joe Burrow leaves as well. Can't wait until that happens. But yeah, Carlos Dunlap, a 31-year-old Pro Bowl, All-Pro type player in the past, you get for a conditional 7th or a 7th round pick, depending on where you've read it, and BJ Finney, who hasn't seen the field at all for the Seahawks this year. If you're Seattle, that's a huge win, right? You get BJ Finney's contract off the books, which is $4 million, and instead you get a pass rusher who can actually help this year. Not this Sunday because of the stupid rule that I've seen that means neither Griffin nor Dunlap can play this week, which still boggles my mind. We'll touch on that later. But Carlos Dunlap is a guy who seems like a very high character dude, apart from what's just happened this past week. But again, I'll take that on the Bengals' ineptitude more than anything. And good players being part of a bad situation doesn't seem to last very long anyway. What do you make of the trade as being a non-biased onlooker?
Well, I'm probably going to sound just as biased as you because I think there's no way you can say, Seattle have messed up here or they're going to end up regretting this trade because they've managed to get rid of BJ Finney. As you mentioned, myself and Alen, we played the same amount of snaps BJ Finney has for the Seahawks in 2020. Nada. But
he's got $4 million more than us this year, though.
Yeah, that's the only the major difference. But obviously, BJ Finney and this what's good. Yeah, sounds like it's going to be a 7th round pick. And Dunlap, who he was not immediately because he won't play, as we've just said. But it's no secret that Seattle needed pass rush help. Ever since they weren't able to bring Clowney back for 2020, there's been a hole on that offense.
A big hole.
But he will help as of I think when the Seahawks play Buffalo in a couple of weeks' time. But yeah, the fact they got him so cheap, it was pretty obvious that Dunlap was going to be leaving Cincy. It's quite a public, rather spectacular falling out, and then it just kind of made sense. Once it was evident that Dunlap wanted out, you ask all the talking heads around the league, which team, you have 5 seconds to answer. Which team needs pass rush help? I mean, 9 out of 10 people say Seattle, wouldn't they? So, contending team, they're going to be making moves. Obviously, rumour swirling that Seattle aren't quite done yet. So you can see one or two other positions they can look to strengthen as well. But it's you can say that the Bengals have done all right for this as well. Obviously, they managed to dispatch a player who likely would have not played another snap for the team this year. So, of course, Seattle desperately get the pass help they needed. So, as I say, it was a similar situation with the Cowboys getting rid of Griffin. Like, this guy wasn't going to be on the team next year, so you just kind of recruit anything you can get for this player, even if it's a 7th-round pick.
Well, I think the optics of trading a Dunlap for BJ Finney thing, like if you said that like 3 years ago, people would be like, "What crack are you smoking?" Like, well, a good job on Carlos Dunlap tanking his trade value to the point that he gets traded for BJ Finney. And B, I think for Seattle, it's such a low risk type of move that realistically, there's no one available on the free agent market that's anywhere near as good as Carlos Dunlap. Maybe Clay Matthews in his prime, but Clay Matthews is certainly not in his prime right now. And keep him the hell away from Seattle. Thank you very much, Pete Carroll. Don't let the UFC thing like cloud your judgment there, because I know you're listening to this, Pete Carroll. But I really like it, and like you said, I don't think the Seahawks are done. I really don't. I feel like there will be, because the thing we know about John Schneider is when he feels like his team can be a contender, he goes all in, and I really respect him for that. There's no messing about. It's like, what do we need to do to get this team to be a champion? And the only thing that I thought was going to hold back this team was that D-line, because we can talk about the secondary all you want, and you know this, Luke, as well. The secondary can only keep fantastic receivers shut down for so long. That's why they're fantastic receivers. Yeah. That's why they're the best receivers in the world. That's why they play in the NFL. You can't play coverage for more than 4 or 5 seconds on someone. And there's been a lot of times where the quarterbacks in games, and I know we've won like 95% of our games, but there's been too many times where it's just been in the pocket, just waiting to throw 4 or 5 seconds, and that shouldn't be happening for an elite NFL team. So having a Carlos Dunlap and hoping another player comes in, because I don't feel like the Seahawks are done, and then having Snacks Harrison come in and provide some rush defense, Rasheem Green come back from injury, Darrell Taylor seems like he's coming back from injury really soon, the Seahawks 2nd round pick, which is really, really positive, because all the reports were that they were super high on Darrell Taylor, and I think if he didn't get his injuries in Tennessee, I think he definitely would have gone in the 1st round this year. We've touched on Darrell Taylor, if you go back and listen, in our draft podcast and stuff. So I think the only way, it was very hard not for it, the only way to be up for the Seahawks and that D-line, but it's looking positive in the right way. And Jamal Adams is coming back soon as well, which means that there's another wrinkle in the pass rush, because Jamal Adams as a pass rusher is quite possibly the most exciting player in the NFL. Like, I don't think there's a player who's more box office on the defensive side than Jamal Adams is. I think he's so fun to watch, man. I think, honestly.
He's a brilliant player. Like, other people were saying, like, the safety position is starting to lose its relevance in the modern day NFL. It's like, well, just watch Jamal Adams play. Just stick a camera on him. Just seeing that complete difference he makes to any game, just patrolling that secondary, and quarterbacks beware. If you pass on this guy, you better make sure it's a pinpoint pass, because he is ball hawking, he is game changing, and when it's not healthy, like a Seattle team, it's going to give that defense a massive lift. And if there's anything you can criticize the Seattle team at the moment, it's obviously on the defensive side of the ball. Then we're Super Bowl contenders, aren't we? So,
it's like I said, it's the one side of the ball that you do need to address is that D line. Obviously you can make improvements everywhere all the time. I just want to say thank God we did not sign Antonio Brown.
Yes,
thank you, goodness. Like,
There was talk with the Seahawks. There's an extensive background check, and they just obviously they didn't like what they saw. Which can you blame them? Like
I have a conspiracy theory about that.
Yeah.
If you want. I think it's very well noted that Russell Wilson and Antonio Brown are friends. I think the Seahawks are putting interest out there to try and get someone to bite to sign him before they got the opportunity to. But I think it's an absolute travesty that Antonio Brown can play in the NFL before Josh Gordon can. I want to say that as well. A guy who you've excommunicated from the league for a substance that's now legal, and you still haven't reinstated him, I think it's an absolute joke. Josh Gordon should have been playing from week 1.
Yeah, so there's no consistency, is there? Like, for what you see what Brown's done, there's still like teams queuing up to sign him. Obviously, now he's landed on the Bucks, but again, I don't quite know why they needed him. But like you're gonna say, you can't. You've got to paint all these players with one brush. You can't just like pick and choose your like these punishments. That's what it feels like at times. Like 8-game ban here or 2-year ban there. Like the NFL's got to take a look at itself there a little bit and kind of really make it black and white. Their sort of like suspension rules and really clarify. So teams know. So it's quite obvious that when teams sign players and they're like potentially going to suffer suspension, like just make it like black and white. Okay, well, like this player's violated this rule, so we're going to slap with an 8-game ban. Boom, like done and dusted. There's improvement there, definitely.
Well, it's just before we move on to who we think's looking likely to get traded in the next few days. I just want to touch on Antonio Brown. Like, there's no doubt he's a phenomenal player. Like, when he is healthy and 100%, I really think he's the best receiver in the NFL. Like, that's how good Antonio Brown is. He should not be playing in the NFL. If a guy who smokes marijuana is not playing, but a guy who with a really, really disturbing record over the past few years is allowed to play after week 8, I think it's a joke. And I think that should not be lost on people.
No, exactly. You say that obviously the guys are the talent he can play ball. That's why I imagine the Bucks are the only team who are going to give him a call straight after week 8, get him to play. But I suppose it depends. It's a weird one. You think, well, like you wouldn't take Bruce Arians as a guy who'd be like, do you know what, Antonio Brown's the kind of guy I want on my team. But the way he's been talking to the media, like he said, it was him and like the GM's call, and like it had nothing to do with the fact that Brady was obviously quite vocal on getting Brown in the building. Obviously, that was a big reason why Antonio Brown was signed by the Patriots last year, albeit he only played 1 game. But if it wasn't for Brady playing quarterback there, Brown wouldn't have played for the Patriots. And you can say the same thing with the Bucks. Like I think Brown has just followed Brady there, to be honest. But the fact that Arians has come out and denied this, I think Arians, he kind of has a history of kind of twisting things a little bit to the press, like kind of not giving the full picture. But it's something stinks there a little bit. But the Bucks, they didn't exactly need receiver help. They already got Evans and Godwin. They're pretty Cameron Brate tight end. Obviously lost OJ Howard, but they got Gronk, so he's not a bad third tight end really to have, is he? So, but yeah, I mean, the point stands. Like Brown, he's not. That's not someone you got to think. Is the league almost justifying the behaviour? Like, okay, well, we'll let this guy back in the league. We'll slap him with an 8-game ban, and that'll be the end of it. Like that shouldn't be the end of the situation. It should be. You say like Josh Gordon being a great example. Again, like how can the punishments for the 2 players be so different?
It's ridiculous. Like I said, for a substance that's no longer banned in the NFL.
Yeah, exactly. Nail on the head.
It's not even tested for anymore. Like they don't even test for marijuana use anymore. Exactly. And you're telling me that you can't reinstate Josh Gordon yet?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you can say fair enough. Like okay, they can. Find the guy it for a certain amount of time, but can we try and like retrospectively apply rules here and like allow this guy back into the league like sooner than is mandated. Like, come on.
But the thing with Josh Gordon is there's no mandate on when he should be allowed back in the league. So if the league decides he's back today, he's back today. Like as soon as they, what's it called, in this new CBA decided you're not going to get banned or tested for marijuana use anymore, Josh Gordon should have been let back into the league immediately.
Yeah.
Like I'm not being funny. There's been a lot worse things in the NFL to happen than a guy who's wanted to smoke a joint after he's played a game.
Yeah, it should be the least of the least concern, shouldn't it? Like, good luck. Choice. You know, it's the guy's choice. If there's evidence for arguments on both sides, like the harm or sometimes what it can do to actually help the body. So it's just the fact they should, like, why should the league have so much power on saying when a guy can return? Why can't it just be 8 games, 2 years? Like, why? Like, we'll decide when this guy's allowed back in. Like, because obviously, you've got like the people being given this power. How, like, what's their, you get it. They're like, obviously they're just people, positions, and power, but how do they understand the full gravity of the situation? So
precisely, it's a joke. It really is. We'll touch on the trade targets on the overtime show on YouTube. I do just want to touch on one thing before we do go off the air on the main podcast. Tua starting now for Miami. How do you feel about that?
Oh, the time has come. Like, I'm so happy to see him. Like, I know we talked about it length before. Like, this guy, he was, I think, probably both our number one guy coming in. Like,
definitely.
It wasn't a bad injury. Like, he's better than Burrow. I think he's going to ultimately prove that.
He's better than Herbert. We've touched on that.
Exactly. It's just, I think this Miami, like, I was quite excited to see this Miami team at the beginning of the season. Now Fitzpatrick's guided them to a fairly, I think, is it 3-3 in the current moment? So, like, they're fully in contention to compete. Like, they're looking better than the Patriots at the moment. Cam Newton aside, like, he's strong. He's going through at the moment. But the Dolphins are a fun, exciting team to watch. They've got a nice young core there. They're going to have some.
I don't want to say that I called it, but guess who called it in our season preview?
But they've got some nice draft picks there, courtesy of my Texans.
Sorry, Luke.
Exciting times at Lions, but I mean, I could pick a team, like, we could have to donate our potentially top 10 first round pick to, then I guess Miami is kind of up there. Like, you can't really hate on this team. Like, they bring through the mire quite a bit. Obviously, they had success, with Dan Marino and everything back in the 80s, but it's nice to see them, like, back in those big names of the team that you kind of like, you want to see compete, and hopefully they can challenge Buffalo for that the crown in the East.
Well, that's what I was just about to say. Say it really quietly, but Buffalo's looked really, really bad the last 2 weeks. Like, they've fallen off a cliff. Like, if I'm going to be honest, like the only reason they look so dominant. Precisely.
Yes. Okay. So they're riding that Josh in the way, weren't they? So it's, again, like, once, that's what we've always known with Josh Allen, isn't it? I think people start to get carried away a little bit, but he's erratic, isn't he? So he can, but it's just the way he plays. Like, he can throw 5 touchdowns a game, where he could easily throw 5 picks. He can pass for 90 yards. He can run for 90 yards. There's so many aspects to his game that you kind of, you don't really know what kind of game now. He's done a next game, so it's testing. Then he could be the best quarterback in that division.
Oh, and Tua, man, like you said beautifully. I think he was like, even with how good Burrow was this season at LSU, and that's not a slight at all to Joe Burrow, Tua was still the best quarterback in this draft class. The only thing that stopped Tua being
Yeah.
a slam dunk number one overall pick was the injuries. And I don't know. I think it's been freak injuries though. Like, I'm not worried about his injury proneness. Like we talked
No,
about it before. It's freak injuries. I'm not worried about
exactly.
Tua in the slightest.
But the injuries he's had, they're not repetitive issues. Not like something like Todd Gurley example. Like we know he's got dodgy knees. Like there's not something like that. It's like it was a freak injury. He's obviously had successful surgery on it. Like obviously the Dolphins have been careful with it. Like they didn't play him straight away. You kind of almost feel like this plan was always in place. It would come and start for them straight after the bye. So now they've got a full week. They can fully prep him. He can get up to speed. Obviously, he played a couple of snaps and the game just gone to kind of get a bit of a feel for it. So I'm so excited to see him, and it's just how nice is it to see a left-handed quarterback back in the league as well. So it's been a while. It's Kellen Moore, isn't it, or something? So
yeah,
bring on to let's see it.
So for the listeners to just a podcast edition, first of all, get on YouTube after this, watch the full edition. We'll be touching on people who we think will get traded, guys who we'll touch on the NFC East, NFC West. Yeah. So, Luke, where can they find your writing for the people just listening to the podcast?
At Conboy NFL, Twitter and Instagram is where you'll find me. And you say, if you mentioned this, keep plugging that, the YouTube, search it, Franchise Sport Talk Football over on the YouTube. That's where you'll find mine and Alan's beautiful faces. Obviously,
Indeed.
his is much more beautiful than mine, but it's not a competition, don't we? Let's say at Conboy NFL is the Twitter and Instagram, and more importantly, Franchise Sports Talk Football over on YouTube.
And welcome, guys, to the people who've just joined the YouTube. Thank you for staying on if you're still watching this. To FSTFOT. Let's go on to what I think is the most important thing is
drum roll.
Fire Adam Gase. This is what we're starting every extended edition with until he gets fired.
Yeah, exactly. Mark this date. Adam Gase, 20th of October, still the head coach of the New York Jets.
Hopefully won't be next week, but I won't hold my breath. That's enough time. I want to double.
He's given up play calling, so one step closer.
Well, I think he had to.
Yeah, I think it was more. I think he was pushed, wasn't he, rather than making decisions himself.
Did you see? I don't know if you watched First Take on ESPN. A few weeks back, Stephen A. Smith, the good old Stephen A. Smith, tried to say that he was on some type of drugs.
Oh man, I've seen all the. I mean, I think the conspiracy theory's been there since day one, since the head, like the roll of the eyes, and his unveiling his press conference. Feel like, yo, like what is up with this guy? But yeah, he's definitely one for the conspiracy theorists of the NFL to explore. But I wouldn't 100% rule it out because there's clearly something going on in that guy's mind that is different from the norm. But yeah, it's a curious case, isn't it? And then each passing week, like, are the Jets are they going to win one game this year, or are we heading Cleveland Browns 0-16-esque disaster?
Well, even if they do head that way, like if I'm Trevor Lawrence, like I flat out refuse to play for the Jets.
Exactly, he's got the beauty of one more year in college if he wants it. So, but obviously Justin Fields doesn't quite have that luxury. So
no. And Trey Lance will just be happy that he's a first-round pick from North Dakota State. Like,
following those went steps, but it could be. I mean, I don't think it'd be even shocking if it's the Jets who do have number one, and if another team may perhaps trade the Jets and wouldn't put it past the Jets to take an offer to move out number one, but I think then Lawrence would then sort of turn around and say, do you know what? Yeah, I will declare myself for the draft, but. I mean, he's got, even as there's so many people advise it, and they all got to be saying the same thing. Like, if the Jets have number one, and you have the option, the fact that he's not going to have exactly a normal year of college ball at Clemson anyway, so perhaps he just wants another year anyway to refine his game. Just it's going to be tough entering the NFL potentially still in 2021 as well. So I think a lot of things are starting to point towards the fact that Lawrence will play his senior year at Clemson.
But let's move off for the Jets because that's enough of talking about Adam Gase. That's all he deserves.
Until next week.
Yeah, until he gets fired. And then I hope I'll never have to mention Adam Gase's name again. I want to touch on. Let's touch on the trade targets first because that's a topical debate. Who do you think is a guy who could potentially be available in the next few days and a guy that you could definitely see leaving his current situation?
Yeah, I think one of the bigger names to watch, I think, is David Njoku, tight end, Cleveland Browns. Quite an obvious candidate. The fact that he did initially request being traded back in July, but back then the team managed to talk him out of it, and he's still on the roster, and he has played meaningful reps. I think he's got a touchdown and 2 to his name. But obviously, the competition for reps is strong in Cleveland. You look at free agent signing at Austin Hooper, just had his appendix up, so perhaps he's going to be out for a bit of time. But also they got Harrison Bryant, the rookie, who
looked phenomenal.
Exactly. So the more reps he's going to be playing. Obviously, the Browns going to prioritize Bryant over Njoku. So I think obviously the Browns, they're going to have a fairly high price tag on Njoku. He can obviously still contribute. He's got plenty of years left in the tank, and you sort of look across the league. There are a few tight end needy teams there, or there's a few. There's one team particularly that likes to collect tight ends.
God bless the Chicago Bears.
I was going to say no prizes for guessing that one, but it wouldn't be wild to see Njoku on the Bears. I think the Colts were another team I could see possibly making a move as well.
Patriots.
Exactly. So I think, same with the Colts. I think they reckon they can compete this year. At the moment, I think they've got it's like Jack Doyle, Mo Alley Cox kind of leading the tight end core at the moment. They're not, I think Doyle is okay, but he's kind of had his time. Like he's not quite the same. Also, they're trying to force the ball quite a lot to Mo Alley Cox. And obviously, Rivers quite likes his tight ends in the end zone. Obviously, he had
always has.
Exactly.
Always
so he's always had great guys to lean on. So I think Njoku wouldn't be surprised at all to see him move in the coming days. Obviously, November 3 is the deadline day. Definitely a name to watch.
A name that I'm going to give you, and it's a name I think you'll hate as a Texans fan, but I do see JJ Watt getting moved. Unfortunately for you.
If you posed that to me like a year or two ago, like JJ, like we can't let him go. But now, because the way this year has turned out, we need to get back some draft capital, and that's the sort of name we're going to have to try and dispense. Obviously, Texans going to have a high price tag on the guy, but I think there's going to be a lot of teams who need help with the pass rush and at defensive end. They're going to be quite hesitant on JJ. Like he's got injury history. So it's it's going to be a difficult one, but as I say, Texans no first round pick is well publicized. So if there was any time to move on from JJ, now is time. You can sort of say the same for Whitney Merciless as well. He's on quite a
hefty contract.
Exactly, he doesn't have a team-friendly contract by any means, but I mean, the guy, he struggled this year. Like he seems to slow dramatically. I don't know what it is with him exactly, but he's not enjoying his game at the moment. So perhaps if he moved to a team, like he'd be a breath of fresh air. And then there's no shortage of potential landing spots there at all. One for JJ that particularly sticks out for me is the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, good one.
You know what that would mean, wouldn't you? TJ
and JJ.
on the same team. Just
is Derek there as well?
Insufferable. Yeah, exactly. So it would be the three ones, all the Steelers, and just how insufferable the media be like, oh my god, all the Watt guys. Like, I suppose I mean no more of those ridiculous like half and half jerseys you see for Watt mum and dad when the Steelers play the Texans. Like you've got one half Texans, one half Steelers. Like there'll be no more of that. But I can definitely see it happening. Steelers aren't afraid to pull this off their trade to get Minka Fitzpatrick. So I could definitely see it. Bucks as well. I think they could do with the help. What about your Seahawks? Potentially, could they be making moves? And now they've done that, could they have one more face there?
Oh, on the Seahawks, unless they want a 2022 third round pick, I think that's the most the Seahawks will give up.
Exactly, and I can't see the Texans accepting that.
Unless the other offers are so bad that like a 2022 third round pick is probably the best they can get at this point. Which I hope not for your sake, but for the Seahawks' sake, I'd love it personally.
I can't see it for JJ. Perhaps Merciless. I think the team would be quite happy to rid of him of that contract, but
I don't think anyone gives up a third round pick for Whitney Merciless at this point.
No,
it'll be like a 7th round pick for Whitney.
So yeah, but perhaps 2022 teams might be a bit more happy to give up a higher selection, or make it a conditional 4th or 5th or something. But anything that the Texans can get, really, I think they should definitely consider, because for what Bill O'Brien's done, he essentially set back this franchise years, because he's gone completely win now with a team that wasn't quite ready. Perhaps it would have been if he kept building slowly, build the team around Deshaun Watson, because he's a top 5 quarterback in the league. Argue what you want with that. I firmly believe that. Call me biased, but hey, Watson is something special. So, yeah, exactly. The Texans, I think they're definitely going to be sellers. We can't exactly be buyers at the moment because no first, second round picks. So you look at JJ, you look at Whitney Mercer, there's guys potentially moving on. Will Fuller, Brandon Cooks, exactly, yeah. A couple of guys have been mentioned. Will Fuller, who's for the last part, he stayed quite healthy. Too much of the Texans fan base is surprised, but he kind of felt like
everyone's surprised.
He is one burst away from doing his hamstring in. So again, Brandon Cooks, history of concussions as well. I think he had 2 or 3 on the year last year. So, but again, guys we could potentially move, because we do have a bit of depth there at wide receiver. Obviously, Randall Cobb had a fairly decent game against the Packers. I think he was quite keen, possibly for a revenge game. But we've got guys like Asai Coulter, rookie, who's quite impressive. He has been activated off IR actually, so he'll probably hit the field soon. So there's guys there, and you think again teams are going to be looking to make a move for wide receiver. I think there's plenty of names out there that teams going to be make a move for. I think one team that sticks out in particular for Fuller or Cooks is the Packers. Obviously, there's so much talk about Rodgers not getting the help he needed, yet he's still making magic happen. But if you add Fuller or Cooks to the offense, it's going to be hugely improved. Already very decent looking team.
Definitely, and another name that I did want to throw out there is someone like I don't know, like, can you think of anyone that's underrated as like as a guy who's going to be on the trade deadline? Like, there's always one surprise. There's always one.
I mean, I have so many potential receivers I could see potential in the move, but if we want to talk someone who I think has been dealt a bad hand and he can definitely do with a brush of fresh air, let's talk about Dwayne Haskins. Like, obviously he's been under the Riviera regime in Washington. He's not even the backup. He's now 3rd string. The team,
which is crazy.
Obviously, Riviera is happy. He knows what he gets out of Kyle Allen, and Allen's solid. I'd say not game changing. Obviously, Alex Smith is an incredible story. The fact that guy is even on the field, surely he's an absolute shoo-in for comeback player of the year.
Absolutely.
But, obviously Haskins 3rd on the depth chart, no future. But I think the trouble is, I think it's a tough market for a QB. I think currently, because I think it's the best caliber. You can still say our teams can definitely get better at the position, but you can kind of think, okay, everyone's kind of got a starter. Obviously, there's the players sort of 28, 32 ranked who aren't exactly great. So you kind of think, what teams could do with a decent backup? Like we're sort of getting like Josh Rosen, I think, territory here a little bit, but I think Haskins he's got so much more to prove. So I think teams
I don't think
looking to the future. I think with him.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think he was that bad. Like when I watched him play, I think he just looked like a young quarterback who needed reps.
Yeah, with not a lot around him. Like
he has Terry McLaurin, and that's it.
That was it. And obviously, teams going to know they're going to double cover him any chance they get. So
because they have no one else.
Exactly, and obviously you need the Haskins McLaurin connection work because you saw it in college. Because so
that's what got McLaurin drafted.
Exactly. And now you think, oh, Haskins is. I think like, I don't know. It'd be nice. Like probably, obviously, yeah. If the team made a move for Haskins, he can't actually play this weekend. But why can't the Cowboys get him?
Especially
Like
if you're
Andy
gonna.
Dalton is potentially up for time. They've got Ben DiNucci leading the line at the moment. Surely Haskins is an upgrade there.
Especially if you're planning on moving on from Dak in the future, which I
Exactly.
think the Cowboys are.
Yeah, but it seems to be the way they're heading. It seems to be the fact they refuse to pay him and everything. But I mean, Dax is going to get paid in 21. That's for sure. Potentially not going to be Dallas. I think there's going to be plenty of other teams out there that are going to want him, and they will pay him. So definitely, there's going to be a lot of QB movement again in 2021, like we saw in 2020. Not quite on the scale of that, but like Brady and Rivers and all these old guys moving on. But you think, like, I don't know, maybe something like the Bears or the Falcons, could they do with another option at quarterback? Like,
Especially the Falcons.
The Falcons, yeah, like kind of what's going on with Matt Ryan. Like, obviously, the team have come out and said, we're not, there's no fire sale here, like just because we're having a bad season. Like, Ryan's going nowhere, Julio Jones is going nowhere. Obviously, he's going to be a massive cap hit if anyone who wanted to take a dart on him, but he won't be going anywhere. But yeah, I think the Falcons, they've got their own difficulties of their own, so maybe it would be the best environment for Haskins, but there's a potential window there to play. And I think the Steelers could be another option for Haskins potentially as well. See, Big Ben's not exactly got many years left in the tank. In fact, he's made a great. He's been really good. Smith, he'd be the shoe-in for the Combat Player of the Year. But they could do maybe it's time for them to start thinking about Plan B as well. And if they can get Haskins, and if he start looking good in trading, like it'd be a great cheap option rather than just having to have to trade up and find your next franchise guy. Why not trade for this guy now? You could probably get a conditional 7th. Like
it would be really, really low.
So why not just take a chance on the guy? Like it might not work out. Like obviously with Rosen, he's kind of bounced around a couple of teams now, and no one's kind of quite fallen in love with him. So all I can say is why not? I think our team should take a chance on him.
Well, I agree with you. I think Dwayne Haskins. Excuse me. Dwayne Haskins should absolutely be part of an NFL franchise long term. Like, he's better than Daniel Jones. We don't talk about this.
Yeah.
I think he's looked better than Daniel Jones. But I don't even. You know me, I'm a big proponent of the race issue in the NFL. But I don't think it's a race issue. I just think Kyle Allen is Ron Rivera's guy. We saw it last year in Carolina. Yeah. I think Ron Rivera just really loves Kyle Allen, and I think having Alex Smith as your number 2 is just a beautiful, like you said, it's just a great, great story. And so Dwayne, I felt like as soon as Ron Rivera got Kyle Allen in the building, I thought Haskins' days were numbered, unless he came out and just balled. But like I said, I don't think he's been that bad when he's played. I think there's a lot more positives than negatives there for Dwayne Haskins. And like you said, if I'm the Colts, if I'm the Steelers, if I'm the Falcons, if I'm the 49ers, if I'm basically anyone with either a QB who has an injury history or an older QB, that's the guy I'd be targeting.
Exactly. He's still only 23, Haskins. So he's got so many years ahead of him. And you just hope he lands in the right place and he can work his way back onto the field because he deserves another shot.
Definitely, man, definitely. And I think it's going to be a fun trade deadline to watch, and no doubt we will bring you the picks that we enjoyed the most, and the guys who we were surprised to see traded, etc., etc. Hopefully, it won't get lost in all the in all the political stuff that's going on in America, because that's the most important thing. Like, guys, I said it earlier, go vote if you're in America.
November 3.
But yeah, the last thing I want to touch on before we go off the air is the NFC East and the NFC West. Like, just a quick comparison of the two. Like, how unfair is it that potentially a team that goes 10-6, 11-5 potentially in the case of the NFC West, which I could see happen. I could see all 4 teams finish with a record of at least 11-5, which is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Miss out on a playoff spot
I know, it's crazy.
because of the NFC East. I know you wanted to touch on it, so Luke, take the floor, just so I don't sound like a Seattle homer again. It's your turn.
Yeah, it was some projections earlier thinking like it's quite plausible that we're going to be hosting a playoff game with a 6-9-1 record. Like that just doesn't sit right with me. Like I think it's sort of be prudent of the NFL to kind of bring in some kind of rule to say, well, perhaps teams got to have at least 500, at least 8-8 to kind of qualify for the playoffs, even if they do win their division. Because clearly, if you finish the year 6-9-1, despite whatever injury troubles you've had, like the Eagles, it's unfortunate. Like, it's just not your year. Because put that team in any other division, and they wouldn't be in the playoffs. Simple as.
Precisely.
So then you kind of you look across the way into the West at the moment. You've got 49ers who are fourth in that at the moment, 4-3. Which if you put them into NFC East, they'd be the leaders by a game and a half. So it doesn't quite sit right. The fact that it's going to be quite likely that one of Seahawks, Cardinals, Rams, 49ers, obviously one's more likely than the other ones, that are going to miss out on the playoffs, and they're going to have quite feasibly 10 wins, and they won't get a playoff spot. It's mad. And then you sort of think like, well, it's going to have like draft implications. What's the Eagles going to be picking quite a few picks later than they would have been normally, and then all of a sudden, say like the Rams, 49ers, who had a fairly decent win record, and they're still going to be rewarded with a fairly decent draft pick. It's just all that's going to do is kind of it's going to make one of those West teams stronger than they already are. The Eagles are going to fall back further, and it's just going to have ramifications for both NFC East and the West. Like, they're just going to fall into this trap of all four teams in the West are going to be better than all four teams in the East for the next 2-3 seasons. Like, as you touched on with Daniel Jones, like the Giants, they don't seem to be heading anywhere far. So if they lost Saquon Barkley, but again, like how much success the team can have that's built around their running back. It's exactly the same with the Cowboys. Like, obviously they lost Dak, who's a much better quarterback than Daniel Jones, but apparently Zeke isn't to be this, star-studded player. And we haven't really seen much out of him. The Cowboys are 2-5. Like, you can't put the ball in the hands of your running back and can say, go win this game. So, as you see with, obviously, coaching is a big part of it, but the 49ers are a classic example of you don't need to have some blue chip running back to be a successful franchise. Obviously, Garoppolo's had his struggles, but he's still a serviceable quarterback. But he's almost had a different starting running back in every single game. It's been Jarrett McKinnon, it's been Jeff Wilson, it's been Jermichael Hasty, like Tevin Coleman's in there. The list goes on. The fact that the 49ers can just put the ball in that guy's hands, and the fact they have a functioning offense, the fact they can have an opposing passing attack, is they can run on teams, so they just put the ball in the guy's hands. The offensive line holds up, and they can run for the first down quite easily and run in for the score. Like, it's just almost comical, I'd say. Like the fact that we could see Eagles 6-9-1 hosting a playoff game, and chances are they're going to be playing the third place team in the West. It's just going to be such an easy win, you'd think, for the team from the West. Like, it just makes no sense to me.
Same here, man. It's one of those mind-boggling things. Like, you go from being a top 10 pick potentially to hosting a game in the playoffs, and I think that's so unfair. It's ridiculous.
That's just where the comparison just really hits home. Like the whole point of the draft is to try and create a fair and balanced league. You give the worst teams the best picks, but you're not doing that when you're rewarding 6-9-1 teams with a playoff place. Like,
I don't know about you, but I'd be really in favor of the model the NBA adopts, where they still have like their little divisions, like the NFC West. You have like the Pacific Division, which has like the Lakers, the Clippers, the Warriors, the Suns, the Sacramento Kings in there. But it doesn't go on who's won the divisions. It's just you play a division more than everyone. but the best teams go into the playoffs. So the best 8 teams in each conference go into the playoffs, regardless of your record. And you winning your division or not, because that means nothing. Like,
And that's
realistically,
what all the fans are going to want to see. They want to see the team compete in the playoffs. Like, no, there was the fear that obviously we've now got this one extra playoff place, and there was the fear that we're going to see like some like bog standard like 8-8 team just given a playoff place and they're just going to lose the game. All of a sudden, you look at the NFC East situation, be it the Eagles or Washington or the Cowboys. Like none of those teams strike me as playoff teams.
no.
And all 4 teams in the West do. In fact, I could see 2 or 3 of them in like NFC Championship level. Like
Definitely. Like, if it breaks right for the Cardinals, they could be an NFC Championship type team as well. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, the amount of talent there is in one division. And it goes back to my argument. Would you rather see the Eagles host the Cardinals, or would you rather see another Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray matchup potentially? I know which one I'd rather see.
Yeah,
I know which one you'd rather see. Like,
I think I know what 99.9% of the NFL fan base would want to see as well.
but it's that thing of like, I think we're very new school in the way that we think on things like this, whereas the NFL decision makers are very old school in the way they think on this. And I think that's where the biggest difference lies there, to be honest with you. It's such a shame, though, that I genuinely think we'll see one of these really good teams miss out on a playoff spot because of the fact that, excuse me, because of the horrible NFC East getting a spot automatically. I think it's ridiculous.
It's overhanging, horrible, inevitable feeling it's going to happen. And say even if the Eagles do sneak a win in that one playoff game, that's still, like, long-term speaking, is that doing them any favours? And then they're going to get blown out in the divisional round by an obviously superior team. Right. And then we're stuck in this constant loop of Eagles picking around about 22nd, 23rd in the draft, not going to get much better. So it's just this like this. It's obviously it's going to take. It's obviously it potentially going to become a wider issue in the league, and look at some sort of restructuring of the league. Do we kind of do away with these 4-team divisions?
Like I said, I think it's stupid.
Like I say, like the NBA model that works. That rewards the best teams with the playoff places. Obviously, they have obviously like a long season and everything, so they can ultimately prove that fact. But it's situations like this where it should really make the leading figures in the league stop and think, like, hey, is this what we want? Is this the best? Because at the moment, the number one thing that ultimately matters is TV viewership. But in fact, if people start turning off and not watching the NFL, like the NFL is going to lose sponsorship money, less money.
It's not like the NBA, because like people dog on the NBA's viewership ratings and whatnot. The NBA has solely diverted its focus to, okay, viewership in America is great, but how many streaming sites is there now? How many ways is there watched the NBA? The NBA is a global game. I know we're 2 Brits talking about the NFL, but really, outside of like America, Canada, England, Germany, maybe some people in Australia and New Zealand, the market isn't there for the NFL. And if you lose the American market, you're screwed.
Exactly. So they want to do all they can to try and remain like the number one sport, to draw in the most viewers. And if they're going to start, it's just a slippery slope. They're going to be in danger. If it's going to start getting a bad name for itself, the fact that people are going to start calling like the league flawed and everything, saying like, well, why are the bad teams getting rewarded, why are the good teams staying at home in December? Like, there's ways of modernizing the league, but I don't think that's not going to happen until there's some kind of like generational change that goes on in the NFL. To be honest, I think, could you say it's pretty a little bit stuck in its ways at the moment. They're quite happy that they don't want to tamper with the product too much, because as far as where it's working for now, but is it sustainable?
I don't think so.
No.
I really don't.
Exactly, it's it's food for thought. Like, exactly, it's still the game we love. Like, it's but they the sort of the old adage that you don't want to change it too much, you don't want to get too gimmicky. But
I don't think it's a gimmick though.
At the end of the day, we just want to see the best teams rewarded with
Precisely
the best opportunity to go and win the down Super Bowl, which is the ultimate aim with any NFL team.
Would you rather watch the 10-6 San Francisco 49ers hypothetically, or the 5-11 Washington football team? I think that, and that's a very real possibility that we could be looking at. Like, it's not even a high. It's not even. The crazy thing is, it's not even a crazy hypothetical that we're looking at so far. It really isn't.
No, it sounds crazy talking about it, but I'm like, this is such it's such a possibility, and it shouldn't be allowed to happen. Ultimately, that's just to put an exclamation mark on it. It's just, it shouldn't happen.
Definitely, and I think we should end it on there because I think that's a very good point to make.
Luke, we'll revisit, I'm sure, that subject in the coming weeks.
Once all the NFC East teams lose again, it'll be great to watch. Yeah, can't wait to have the 5-11 Washington football team as my NFC East champions. Oh my goodness, I'm going to talk it into existence. I should stop right now. Luke, thank you for coming on again. Where can the good people find you?
Yeah, it's at Conboy NFL on the Twitter and Instagram. And of course, if you're seeing us, you know where to find us. It's YouTube, Franchise Sportsbook Football.
Indeedy. Thank you guys for listening. Be sure to leave us a 5-star review, a thumbs up, subscribe, share, leave us comment, go vote in the US, leave us feedback. We're still new to this, so any comments, anything productive, we will take on board. So thank you so much for listening, guys. Everyone still stay safe. We're in the midst of a second wave of this horrible pandemic, so please everyone stay safe, wear your masks, whatnot. Yeah, take care, guys.
Thanks.